Welcome to the W2W review. I am the Oakland Knight, and today we are going to cover a few different subjects. In segment one, we're going to talk about this coaching staff, the big three heads of this coaching staff: Jack Del Rio, Bill Musgrave, and Ken Norton. And in segment number two, we're going to talk about the other face to this franchise, which is one Reggie McKenzie, who found himself back in the conversation, whether it's been on social media or throughout the media. So let's go ahead and start off with Jack Del Rio. We've been talking a lot about Jack Del Rio in the last few weeks. He's shown guts, he's shown heart, he's shown determination for this team just to win. He's put a lot on his offense, which I thought was which showed that he really cares for both sides of the football, and he knows where his strength is at the moment, which is a positive moving forward. So the question I want to ask today for all four of these individuals that I talked about is, should anybody be on the hot seat at this moment? I mean, we're only 2 weeks into the season, yet there's a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk positive about Jack Del Rio, so we can safely say that none of us really feel that Jack Del Rio should be on the hot seat. At least I don't. Jack Del Rio has done his job. What does Jack Del Rio's job consist of? His job as the head coach is to manage the franchise, to manage the coaching staff, to manage the game, to make sure everything's running on all cylinders. And I do believe that, he's done an outstanding job of doing that. He's managed the clock fairly well. He's got everybody's attention anyway. And where there's holes, he's addressing them thus far anyway. So the question really relies on this defense, unfortunately. It's something that we also been talking about all week, is how poor this defense is, given over 1,000 yards in 2 weeks to this point. So with that being said, though, Jack has taken the bull by the horns. We covered his press conference yesterday, and we talked about how he's dancing around the subject. Yes, absolutely, no question about it. But if you read between the lines, Jack is going to take complete control over the situation. He's going to implement different personnel, and I expect Jack Del Rio to be the play caller this week, to be honest with you. I don't think it's another trial by error where you give that playbook over to Ken Norton to start off the game if your intentions are to take it away if it doesn't produce. I think it's to the point where you just take it. If you're going to take it now. You run with it, and you see exactly where the problem lies. If you can't get the job done, then maybe it is more than just a scheme and schematic issue. Maybe it's more of a personnel issue, and you guys need to do a better job of rotating this personnel completely. I know there's some decisions being made as we speak with Carl Joseph, with Corey James, DJ Hayden's name's been rumored. So there is some personnel changes that are going to be taking place this week as we move forward. But, as far as I'm concerned, Jack Del Rio gets a check mark in the positive side of things, and I'm not worried about Captain Jack at this moment. Let's go ahead and shift our attention over to Bill Musgrave. What are we dealing with here with Bill Musgrave? Now, there is still a ton of hate for Bill Musgrave, and rightfully so. The biggest problem that we have with Bill Musgrave is his play calling, especially at the beginning of games this season. The first half of the game, the play calling is way too vanilla. He's not pushing the ball up the field. He's not trying to make changes during the game. He's waiting till halftime to make his adjustments. And then we seem to really pick up the pace. That's been the biggest knock on Bill Musgrave to this point, is his play calling. And although we still see signs of that here this season thus far, at the end of the day, we're the number one ranked offense in the league. We're averaging over 30 points a game. We are the soul and heart of this football team. And just as much as we're going to give hate and discredit Bill Musgrave for the situations that we see, especially in the first half of games, the constant check downs 2 yards up the field, the ball being thrown behind the line of scrimmage, whether it's a wide receiver screen or a running back screen. And he could do a better job of managing some of this personnel, as far as I'm concerned, anyway, in my opinion, especially with the running backs. The running backs should be our primary check down targets, not our tight ends. Not to say that we should never use a tight end as a check down, but if it's Lee Smith for 2 yards, I'm highly against that. I think they should do a better job of putting our best foot forward and managing that a lot better. But as a whole, I think Bill Musgrave gets a check mark in the positive side of things. I mean, you can't have the number one ranked offense after 2 weeks and put this guy completely down and say he needs to go or he should be on the hot seat. If this continues moving forward for the next 14 weeks, we should have no complaints with Bill Musgrave, even with his vanilla play calling, unfortunately. I want to see that changed. I think Jack even wants to see that changed, although there's nothing that I've heard Jack say to read into that. It's Jack's kind of in the same situation as we are as fans. You know, we could look at this and say, you know what, it needs to change, but at the end of the day, you have the number one offense in the NFL after 2 weeks. As long as that continues, Bill Musgrave's going to be fine. Let's face it. So if you're like me, and you're very disappointed in the way that Bill Musgrave calls games, you know, I mean, you might want to bite your tongue a little bit, because if this continues, Bill Musgrave won't be going anywhere. It's going to take a whole lot more than just vanilla play calling in the first half to fire a guy who has the number one offense in the league, at least at this point. 14 games left. You know, all this talk, Raider Nation, is by all means is very premature. We're 2 weeks into the season. As fans, we tend to get really critical of the football team, and rightfully so. We have that right. That's the one thing that we're able to, put in our pocket, is the fact that we will analyze this team in our way. We'll be very critical, because as fans, we expect as close to perfection. And in most cases, we expect perfection more than the coaches expect perfection. And that's just the way that this whole thing lines up. I mean, as fans, we don't have the responsibilities that they do to make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. We just want to see consistent, constant, great play across the board. So with that being said, Bill Musgrave is not perfect by all means. We all know that. We talk about it. We've been talking about it since last season, that there's an issue there with us anyway, from where we sit and where we look at these things. But right now, he's got this team dialed up to be the number one offense in the league. So we'll see how that continues moving forward. But at this point in time, when I look at social media sites and what have you, even here on this channel, even though we're very hard on Bill Musgrave by all means is safe at this point, and he's earned that by having and developing the number one offense in the league, something that we all personally expected at this point. Returning offense, returning scheme, a third-year quarterback who's growing into the system, who's doing a great job. So right now, even though that there's some issues, I think we are doing okay there offensively. Where the problem seems to lie at this point is on the defensive side of the ball. And that's where I brought up in the live post-game show here on YouTube that it's time for us to start giving Ken Norton a little bit of that hate. I think it's very unfortunate and unfair that we're not allowed to, call him. It's not that we're not allowed to, but we have not put our finger in Ken Norton's face a little bit to say, hey, what's going on here? What about the play calling there? What about the way this defense has performed as a whole? We saw it start slow last season. We saw it develop as the season went along, and statistically, the defense fared better than our offense did at the end of the season. I believe our defense was ranked number 24, and our offense was ranked number 26 in the league, and that still was good enough to get us a 7-9 record, which a lot of us are still not the happiest with. We want to see more out of our team as a whole. We don't want to be in the 20s. We like to get at least into the top 15 in defense or offense. But at the end of the day, Ken Norton has dropped the ball. And whether it's a personnel issue, whether it's a schematic issue, is irrelevant at this point to me. And Jack Del Rio's doing the right thing. He's not wasting no more time. It looks like he's stepping in and taking the bull by the horns, and he's going to stay firm when it comes to that. We've seen Jack Del Rio's history, and Bill Musgrave is a huge part of that history, where we saw him fire Bill Musgrave in Jacksonville in the middle of the season. So, don't rule that out. Ken Norton could lose his job before this is all said and done now. But I think it's too early for that. I think they're going to try to do things Jack's way. The question is how is Ken Norton going to take that as a man? Ken Norton is a very prideful man. Ken Norton is a very passionate man. It's going to be interesting moving forward to see how Ken Norton handles the situation. Just to reiterate something that Jack Del Rio said in his press conference on Monday, talking about, the game, he talked about the eye violations. And he wasn't just talking about the players. He was talking about the coaches, too. There was a quote in there, and I'm going to paraphrase and not be exact on the quote. But Jack said something on the lines of, as a coaching staff, we need to have our eyes in the right places and putting the people in the right situation. So he was talking personnel wise. Now, is Jack basically saying that he let Ken Norton call the shots on the personnel part of things? And that's why we haven't seen Carlos Joseph. That's why Ben Heaney's been in the middle consistently over Corey James. We know for a fact that it was Jack Del Rio that made the decision to bench Sean Smith week 1 against the Saints. So, I firmly don't believe that's all on Ken Norton. I believe that Jack Del Rio has his hand in this cookie jar as well. As far as what personnel is on there, he totally backed up and supported Keith McGill being the starter at safety over Carlos Joseph and Nate Allen, which is something that caught us all by surprise because I don't believe that Keith McGill had the right opportunities in the preseason to prove himself when it comes to game time, working with this first string defense. So, there's a lot of issues going on defensively, and Jack's going to have to take a brunt of that himself because, Jack Del Rio is a defensive-minded coach. This guy has been a part of some great defenses, starting in Baltimore, starting his job and his work in Jacksonville. They were known for great hardcore defense, and we saw what he did in his tenure at Denver. So, we expect more from this defense, and we're not getting it. So, if we had to point the finger anywhere, it has to start with Ken Norton because Jack Del Rio's job is not necessarily to be the defensive coordinator. Although he has to take some of the blame, his job is to manage the whole staff as a whole. And I think he's doing a great job, the weakness being the defense. But moving forward, I think Ken Norton gets a question mark. I don't know. It's too early in the season. All this talk is premature. I just thought I would talk about it mainly due to the fact that, it's being talked about in the social media. We talk about it. We've been talking about it since Sunday here. I brought up Ken Norton's name numerous times in the past 3 shows, and there's an issue there with me. There's a big problem that I have with Ken Norton, and I want it corrected, and it needs to start this week. I'm not expecting us to go from the 32nd ranked defense and end up in the top 10 anytime soon, but we need to start seeing progression. We need to start getting down into the upper 20s starting this week and really put out a great defensive performance so we can come out of here with a win. It's a very crucial time right now. Is in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this is a must-win game. It's not so much a must-win game for the big picture of things, but for the short term, this is a huge game. We need to go out there against Tennessee, and we need to find a way to get a game over 500 because this is the first quarter of the season. It's going to be very important that we finish at least 500, and if we can get this week in our belt as a W, that takes the pressure off this team moving forward as we head back on the road to Jacksonville to face the Jaguars. That's a team that's on the rise. They're going to be, that'll be the 4th week, the end of the first quarter. They should have some things dialed in themselves, and we're going to have to be on our A game, and it'll be nice to have that victory in our pocket already, knowing that we'll at least come out of the first quarter of the season at 500. That will help us as a whole in the whole big picture of things moving forward. And speaking of the big picture of things moving forward, and what it means towards, once again, we're going to be looking a little bit ahead here, but that's okay because sometimes you have to look ahead to really evaluate the conversations that are going on, especially in social media. If people are going to bring up topics this early about coaching staffs, which I'm one to blame for that because I've been calling Ken Norton out, I've been calling Bill Musgrave out, then we should look ahead and talk about the big picture of things because I think it's very important. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to look at one Reggie McKenzie once again. Yes, we're revisiting the Reggie McKenzie topic that I've been talking about since 2013 here on YouTube. I've been a big supporter of Reggie McKenzie, and I'll already let the cat out of the bag. I'm still a huge supporter of Reggie McKenzie, and we'll get into that right after break. So stay tuned.
Carpets is celebrating the holidays with a huge inventory clearance sale. We have the best prices and guaranteed installation. Why would you buy anywhere else? Whether you're looking for laminate, vinyl, carpet, tile, or wood, we have it all. Save up to 50% on selected items. Room size rugs, only $69. Visit Carpets at one of our 6 Bay Area locations or call us at 1-800-355-4MMM.
All right, welcome back to the W2W review. I am the Oakland Knight, and we are entering segment 2 of the show today, where we're going to talk once again about Reggie McKenzie. Now, like I said in segment 1, I've been talking about Reggie McKenzie and been a supporter of Reggie McKenzie since 2013 here on YouTube, and my stance is not going to change, Raider Nation. I believe that this guy has done a stellar job, in my opinion. He's really put his best foot forward since he's got here. He walked in once again. Let's just go ahead and recap a little bit of Reggie's history to this point. He came in 2013 with a huge hill to climb. I mean, this guy had a lot to do. He had to change the front office, personnel in the front office. He had to redevelop his coaching staff, players. The whole organization had to be flipped upside down for him to even get started on his quest to right this ship. So, I've always give him a bye on his first draft just because he didn't have enough draft picks to really make a difference. And let's face it, even with that being said, he didn't do that great of a job. But one thing that everybody fails to realize is that Reggie McKenzie was a rookie, literally a rookie. He had the rookie title. This was his first general manager job. Yes, he's been working with personnel with Green Bay. He was a part of the system and the process over there in Green Bay, but he wasn't the head honcho. He wasn't the one calling the shots. That's where he was taught. And he brought that philosophy from Green Bay back over here, and he learned from Ron Wolf, and Ron Wolf learned from Al Davis. So maybe his style is totally different than Al Davis, but he got a lot of his knowledge of the game from Al. So Ron gave that knowledge to Reggie, and Reggie is a Raider. Let's not forget that Reggie is a Raider, guys. Once a Raider, always a Raider. Reggie was a player on this team. He was a factor in this team, so he is a factor once again. And he was a rookie. So, when it came to season 2, the 2014 draft, he had to go out there and he had to, it was the 2013 draft. Either way, he grabbed DJ Hayden. And we're still picking on Reggie McKenzie for the DJ Hayden pick. And, in a lot of cases, rightfully so. He gambled. He took a shot. Once again, that was his first full draft with all his draft picks. He was filling out the way it works. He was filling out the system. And even though it wasn't the greatest, there was some players that were a part of this team that we were excited about. C.O. Moore, Michael Rivera, Latavius Murray. All these guys land up into that draft class. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it was not the best scenario for Reggie McKenzie that season. But nevertheless, I think he made a step forward from year one, right? So progression, once again, you saw the progression there. Then it really started to heat up. He had some great opportunities. He got Khalil Mack. He got Derek Carr. He got Gabe Jackson. There's a lot of players, TJ Carey. There's just a ton of players on this team that he got from that draft that he took leaps and bounds. In his third year, he took leaps and bounds, and he really set his mark. His biggest question mark at that time was Dennis Allen. We've covered that a million times. I mean, this guy just did not have the moxie or whatever to pick the right head coach. I believe it was more of a power struggle with him. He wanted to make sure that he got someone he could control as he went on this process. Now, it got really sketchy at this point because he was ready to grab his name's slipping my mind right now. Sperano, there you go. Tony Sperano. He was ready to roll with Tony Sperano. Make no mistake about it. And along with Tony Sperano would have became Greg Olson, probably would have came Jason Tarver. They would have tried to keep that coaching staff together moving forward, and it would have been disaster. It would have just been a disaster. That's just my honest opinion. Mark Davis, John Madden stepped in, corrected that by demanding it be Jack Del Rio, got him to understand what his job is moving forward, and his job was personnel. That's Reggie McKenzie's job. Reggie McKenzie's job, his hands are no longer a part of this team as far as how the scheme is being ran, the personnel decisions that are on the field. By all means, Reggie McKenzie has had no say of Carl Joseph starting or being on the bench. He has a lot of say. And the biggest topic lately has been free agency, right? And let's just focus on the defensive side of the ball because that's obviously where the problem's at. You got Sean Smith, you got Bruce Irvin, you got Reggie Nelson. That's the big three on defense. And we could sit here and analyze that all we want. It's only been 2 weeks. It's not fair to put a final stamp tag on any of those players and what they've done thus far. There's still a learning process going on for all three of those guys. This is the first year with this team, with these players. They have to learn. And if you break them down, Bruce Irvin has shown signs of ability to make plays. In the Saints game, he had 2 sacks, 1 taken away off a penalty, but he's around the football and he's around the quarterback, and that's all you could ask at this point. Does he need to raise his game? Absolutely. Does he need to become that pass rusher we brought him in to be? Absolutely. But we have 14 more games to see that. I'm not worried about Bruce Irvin. Sean Smith is the biggest ISO right now. I don't know what's going on, but if you all remember, we all knew that we needed to get a corner on this team in free agency. It was basically and essentially a must. And when we grabbed Sean Smith, there was a few other that were better than him, but we could not get them signed for the money that we were willing to spend, or getting their attention for them wanting to be Raiders. So when we grabbed Sean Smith, there was not one Raider fan that I know of personally anyway, that I've read comments from or anything, that was against grabbing Sean Smith. Everybody was pumping their fists. So we understood what it meant to grab a Sean Smith. Now, it's not working out thus far. It's just not. But once again, it's only 2 weeks into the season. I'm not going to say that Reggie failed by bringing in Sean Smith. Any other GM, any one of us, if we had the knowledge in the wheel to be a GM, would have made the same move of bringing Sean Smith on this football team. The fact that Sean Smith is not panning out goes totally to the scheme and to the coaching staff, not on Reggie McKenzie. It was a great signing. I back him up 100% on that. You know, at this point, it's out of his hands. It's up to Jack Del Rio and Ken Norton, Rod Woodson, for those guys to get this guy ready to perform on Sundays inside the system, inside the scheme. There's no question that he's a talent. We're just not seeing it yet. Reggie Nelson is the next one. Now, there was a few other safeties we were going after. Reggie Nelson was a last grab. But, again, we grabbed the best available safety that wanted to be a Raider, that took the money and came over to this team. Now, he came over with a knee injury. Maybe he's lost a step or two. But at the end of the day, I don't think the personnel around Reggie is performing. If you look at Sean Smith and his inability to cover wide receivers is putting a great strain on someone like Reggie Nelson. You know, if we had Charles Woodson back there, you know, we already saw that Woodson can handle that. Reggie Nelson hasn't shown that yet. So that would be the only question mark that I'm putting on him. But maybe Reggie's trying to do too much. I talked about it in yesterday's show, you know, or maybe it was the Monday show. Anyway, I talked about it this week, where Reggie Nelson's eyes are being more focused to, you know, the middle of the field instead of just focusing on, you know, helping Sean Smith over the top. I mean, that's just my opinion. You know, am I right? I don't know. I will have to see moving forward, because we're going to be doing some personnel changes. We'll see how the play of Reggie Nelson goes. And maybe, you know, he spent the whole preseason working with Carl Joseph and Nate Allen. He did not work with Keith McGill, and Keith McGill becomes a starter the last 2 weeks. That could be an issue in itself, the communication between those two guys. They're learning on the fly, so to speak. I mean, they have practice time, sure, but you know, he had preseason reps with Carl Joseph and he had preseason reps with Nate Allen. So why those two didn't get the nod is out of my pay grade, okay? Way out of my pay grade. I'm just here, you know, breaking down the team the way that I see it and giving my opinions on it. And we're going to see Carl Joseph this week, and I believe we'll see some Nate Allen as well. I think Keith McGill, whether he gets the nod as a starter or not, will be on a short leash. We'll see how that pans out come game time. But those are the three main guys, and at this point, I'm not ready to consider any one of those three busts. And even then, when you look at what was available, what we needed, what we wouldn't get on, there's not one Raider fan that can honestly tell me that was a wrong move bringing in Irvin, Smith, or Nelson. Either one of those guys. You know, Reggie did the right thing. I mean, we don't know. There's no crystal ball to tell Reggie, hey, this is the best available player here, here, and here, and these guys are going to turn around your franchise. That's not a guarantee. There's no guarantees in free agency. There's no guarantees in the draft. And Reggie's been on record numerous times saying that his job is to focus on the draft. That is what he does. So, you know, he's not worried about it, to be honest with you. And be prepared. You know, this last year was our last big run in free agency. Do not expect the Raiders to do a lot this coming up off season, which is a long ways away, by the way, in free agency. Now, if there's a player that you just can't turn your eyes from and you know that's going to be a perfect fit on this team, yeah, you got to make a run at him. But Reggie's not going to be opening the checkbook, man. He is in a position now where he can't. All of our focus this offseason is going to be on the players that we need to bring back to this football team. Two in particular in the next 2 years is Derek Carr and Khalil Mack. That's where the attention is going to be at moving forward, not in free agency, not any middle linebacker. You know, he'll draft a middle linebacker. He will develop a middle linebacker. We got a guy in Corey James that's showing all the potential. He's going to get some action this week, it looks like. He's still a little undersized as far as weight goes, but, you know, he'll have a whole offseason to build up for that. I mean, I think Corey James is going to be a player. He's going to need some more time to develop. He's going to be thrown into the fire because we need a spark. But at the end of the day, once again, I'm bringing all this up just to make one point. The things that I've been seeing around social media and even some of the media sources, should Reggie McKenzie be on the hot seat? Absolutely not. This guy has brought in a ton of talent. Let's go ahead and look at this draft. Carlos Joseph will be a starter sooner rather than later. He's going to get some action this week, so he's going to be a difference maker, in my opinion, on this football team. Then you got Jahad Ward starting on this football team. He's already got a fumble recovery, and he's got some penetration. Calhoun got a lot of playing time last week. Didn't really play the best, in my opinion, but he got the nod either way. So, he's being a player out there. So that's your first three. And then you got Connor Cook, who's shown a lot of signs of being able to be developed. He's the backup of the future, also possible trade bait moving forward. Then you look at a handful of undrafted free agents that are on this football team right now that are contributing. Jalen Richard being the top of that list. This guy is explosive, dynamic, right then and there. I mean, all kudos to Reggie McKenzie and his scouting staff to make sure they got this guy to be a Raider. It's panning out great. You got Johnny Holton, the same type of scenario. Johnny Holton hasn't seen a lot of action, but we saw him on an end around, or a reverse, if you will, last game, and he picked up a first down. The guy has great speed, great vision. That guy's going to be a player in this league moving forward. And then you got a guy like Latham on the defensive line, who some people are saying he should get more time. He should get more action in the middle. Maybe you try him at the Justin Ellis spot and get him some action over the nose. So, look, when I look at this team personnel-wise, this is how you have to judge Reggie McKenzie. There is not one single issue I see at this point when it comes to personnel on this football team. Every single struggle we're having, every problem we're having, mainly on defense, is not a personnel issue at this point. It's a coaching issue, hands down. This is on the table for Jack and Ken Norton to fix, not these players. Yes, these players have to execute and understandably, but at what point do you say it's not so much the player, it's the scheme? We're trying to do too much. We're trying to be too cute with things. We're trying to put too much on the plate and having Reggie's job be more difficult than it should be because we did not do enough to develop Sean Smith on the outside. We got a middle linebacker who's too small and is not being able to get off blocks at the line of scrimmage. So, how many times do you want to see David Amerson and Reggie Nelson making tackles on running backs? I personally don't want to continue seeing that moving forward. So, once again, Reggie McKenzie is not on the hot seat. You don't turn around and give a guy a contract solely based off personnel. You can't even put this coaching staff at this point on Reggie McKenzie. This coaching staff is completely on the shoulders of only three people. That is Mark Davis, number one, John Madden, number two, and then Jack Del Rio himself, because once they made the decision to run with him, Jack Del Rio has made all the decision as far as who's going to be his offensive coordinator, who's going to be his defensive coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look at what this team is at right now, this is not a reflection of Reggie McKenzie. The team's defense is not a reflection of Reggie McKenzie. Bill Musgrave's vanilla play calling in the first half of games is not a Reggie McKenzie issue. The only thing that is being judged on Reggie McKenzie at this point is personnel, and we've gone over that now for darn near 12 minutes, and I'm telling you right now, the personnel on this team is very promising. I mean, 2 weeks into the season, that's the only word that I'm willing to use at this point. There's 14 games left on the schedule. There's still a lot of things that have to be determined, but let's face it, when you look at Carl Joseph, which we don't know exactly how that's going to pan out yet. I get that, but let's look at Jahad Ward, Calhoun. Let's look at the development of Connor Cook, but that's a future argument moving forward. But you look at these undrafted free agents, Latham, Richard, Johnny Holton, Reggie McKenzie has done his job. I want the talk of Reggie McKenzie being on the hot seat to just be wiped off the table. That's just my opinion. I encourage you all to stay true to your opinions the way that we stay true to ours here on the W2W, and just keep moving forward, Raider Nation. But that was the topic of the day. It's kind of the midweek program where there's not so much to talk about. When we show up here tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the press conferences once again between Jack Del Rio and Derek Carr, as we really start to zone in on what it's going to be like when we face the Tennessee Titans. I'm excited. I think there's an opportunity here. We don't need that much from our defense. If our offense continues to strive moving forward, our defense just really needs to get a handful of stops, 4 really solid stops, to give Derek Carr the opportunity to move this offense and get some points, and we could actually get some separations and pull one off. We need to pull away in some of these games. It's not going to be an easy task by all means, and we'll get into that as we move forward. All right, Raider Nation, once again, thank you for tuning in to the W2W review. This has been brought to you by the Will to Win broadcast, and don't forget, you could find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all at the Will to Win. You could also email us your questions and concerns at the W2W at gmail.com. That is the W2W at gmail.com. All right, Raider Nation, until tomorrow, you guys stay Raider strong. Hey there, I'm Jason Smith, also known as the Oakland Knight. We'd like to thank you for watching the Will to Win broadcast here on YouTube. And if you would like to stay up to date for more content like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Or you could click any one of the videos on the side to watch more great videos. Thank you once again, and stay Raider strong.